Welcome to the Cinchuation Podcast, brought to you by Saddle Up. Saddle your horses, tighten those cinches, and join us as we dive into the heart of the Western equestrian lifestyle.
Thank you so much for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yes, absolutely. So we have Randi here today. So you are an author. Sounds like you were just talking about you still writing.
I still write, yeah.
Yes, that's awesome. How long have you been writing? Like books more so?
Books,
Yeah.
like writing
Yeah,
or writing?
or both. Both.
Probably about the same length of time,
Yeah.
which is kind of interesting in a weird way because like when I was a kid, I rode horses all the time. I grew up in Golden. They had like this big old stable.
Yeah.
You know, like you don't really see anymore where like just a gazillion horses and all these kids are taking lessons and all these trail rides are going, all this stuff you don't see anymore. So that was fine. And Golden was really boring. And so I would write stories. Like, so I'd I'd ride in the morning and then I'd write in the afternoon. Or take swimming lessons.
Yeah, or take swimming lessons. Yeah.
There's
that.
There's
There's
all
that
about
too.
that. Yeah. And then it's like you kind of forget about one, or I certainly forgot about horse riding for a while. Don't know why.
Yeah.
Forgot about writing for a while. I think life just gets in the way. You know, if you don't have like the horses available, or you just don't think to write, you know, you're just off doing other stuff.
Life
you know,
gets busy for sure.
going to college, you know, meeting guys, you know, like having a life, getting a job, trying not to get fired from said job. You know, it's just like how it all goes.
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
Cute.
So did you grow up with horses always then, or was it kind of later in life that you?
No, I grew up just like with having him in Golden, and
Yeah.
then a lot of my friends had him, and my cousins had ranches and stuff. So I mean, I was around horses all the time.
Yeah.
I have actually never owned my own horse,
Oh, okay.
and I'm
Yeah.
not proud of it because I would kind of really like to own a horse. But then I also know what they cost to keep if you don't have the land and the stabling to put them
Especially
in.
And if you
today.
want time to write,
Yes.
not ride.
Yeah, right.
I know. I know. It's like, and so like my spare time now, like it's just either working, which is not spare time, that's work time.
Right.
But then I'm writing or writing, and I'm always trying to kind of juggle because like horses need to be exercised. I got book contracts that need to be done, you know, it's like, and
Yeah.
you know, I got to pay the bills.
Oh yeah, that's a big
So-
thing. Yeah. Horses are so
Well, they
they've
are.
always been expensive, but right now, oh my gosh, we were talking with a customer of ours. She's kind of she gives lessons and stuff, and
Right.
she brought it up. She's like, I don't know how new horse owners are coming into the industry right now. I'm like,
Wow.
me either.
There,
Crazy.
one I know, like, so we'll just keep it real general because I don't want to like, you know, they had a problem, and I think one of their horses passed on. They had two of them, and now they just have the one left. And I might be able to ride that one again. But they're like, well, how do you work leases and stuff? So I think if people don't understand when they get a horse, and if they're not used to horses, and they have to pay to board them and stuff like that, we're talking up in the mountains, like, you know, they're paying like $1,200 a month for board.
Oh my gosh. And
So
there's hay and everything on top of it, you know.
well, I
Yeah.
think that's included
Oh, okay, but
usually,
still,
but still. And then it's the vet bills. It's not so much of that, but it's like, you know, like somebody had a fancy horse and something happened, and I was asking the lead trainer, I'm like, well, what do you think that costs? And she's like, $40,000. And I'm like, holy cow. It was like some Tennessee walking horse and stuff. It was a class horse, but you know what I mean. But
No, for sure. It happened. We saw it really in COVID too, to kind of go along with that. Like we were so busy during COVID because people couldn't do anything else.
exactly.
So all these people got horses, and then that following season, a lot of them were being rehomed because they're like, holy smokes, this is.
It takes a lot more time and money than we ever could have imagined.
Yeah,
so,
and COVID
yes.
though, I happily this barn that I used to ride out of called Mount Falcon Equestrian. You know, they were like my lifeline because you could go out to the horses, you know, and that made a big deal having like horses. And, you know, first we all kept our 12 feet distance with our masks on and stuff like that. And then we all got over that. But, you know what I mean? It's like, what are they going to do? Arrest us? I don't know. But, you know, but it was a lifeline.
It's closed, hasn't it?
It has. Yeah. So everybody's
the brother and
dispersed.
sister Yep. Wasn't. Yep.
I don't
kinda
know what all
remember that,
happened.
yeah.
And they said part of it was like insurance costs because like that's the new worry is fire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and so where I ride out of now, they really want people to have a truck up there and a horse trailer in the summers just in case.
yeah.
You know,
That's
they
gonna
gotta
be a
drive
tough
them
one
out.
for
So
sure.
it's just like dang. So then you got a horse, then a truck, then a horse trailer,
Yes.
and then
And
you
then,
know,
yeah.
and I'm like
Price of
going,
hay,
"Oh,
price of fuel. Like,
yeah,
oh,
exactly.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just like it's
The
expensive.
maintenance, like everything. Yeah, it's crazy.
But you know, it's
Did you see
worth
the
it.
lights flicker?
I did.
We have a shop ghost, so just
I
she
didn't
likes to
even
join
notice.
us for the podcast.
Oh,
So I
good,
just
all
saw
right.
them
Quite
and I was like,
often.
yeah.
That's all
That's
good.
nice.
I like ghost stories as well as the experts, and we can do
Yes,
this.
you do.
Yes, I love it. I love it. Oh my gosh. Oh man, yeah, you've written some different stuff like that.
I
for
know,
sure. I love it.
yeah.
I need to read. I want to get all your books and read
Oh,
them.
well,
I think
thank
it
you. I
was so
should have
cool.
brought you a book, but I was just like crazy. I just don't know. Like, here, do you want a book?
No, that's funny. So kind of going into that. So you grew up in Colorado.
Yep.
Right. You kind of write more about like the Wild West.
I do.
Was it kind of always what you wanted to do, or how did that
No,
come into play?
I don't
Yeah.
think I thought about it at all. And
Yeah.
that was like one of the interesting topics you brought up. I
Yeah.
mean, growing up, I thought Little House on the Prairie was just like the bomb. I just thought,
Yeah.
I love those books. You know, I'd sleep with them, all that type of thing. Just thought they were great. And then I grew up in Golden, and I remember the first time, because I was born in Denver, and then my dad was like up at CSU and stuff like that. And then we eventually moved to Golden, like maybe I was like 7 when we moved there.
Okay.
And I remember seeing like the Welcome to Golden, and it was like in neon at that time. It
Yes.
was like the gaudiest thing ever. And they actually still, like, they didn't have boardwalks, but they had like some high sidewalks and stuff, and it
Yeah.
was still really Old
Old
West.
West,
And I just thought that was really, really cool.
Yeah, that is cool.
And I thought it was cool for about like a couple of years, and then I thought it was really boring. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Because
Yeah.
there just wasn't that much to do. So
Yeah.
it was, I think, in my blood always.
Yeah.
And my dad was a great Colorado storyteller, you know, and he had an
Oh.
engineering firm, and he'd be like, well, you know what happened over there, or, you know,
Oh, that's awesome. He had a
botanical-
story for everything.
He did, you know, and I believed him, which is dumber. So, you know what I mean? So I started like writing books, and it's like, you know, especially the Bad Old Days of Colorado is my
Yeah.
first nonfiction. So I'm like, okay, what did your dad tell you? You know, what did dad
Yeah.
say? And some of it was true, and some of it, I don't know what that man
It's
was thinking.
questionable,
Oh,
yeah.
past questionable. I'm like, Dad. And he used to tell me the dumbest stories to see if I'd believe. So
Oh,
I
yeah.
think this is part of it, you know, and
Yeah.
I'm getting older, and I'm just like going, oh,
That wasn't true either.
That wasn't true. So I mean, that
love
was
that,
kind
though.
of funny. So you know, and he's passed on, but I think he's probably like laughing
yeah.
hysterically. He's like, "Yo, she
He's like,
figured that one out,
yeah.
didn't she?"
Yeah.
It's like, you know,
Oh,
because
that's funny.
he would tell you stories with like a totally straight face.
Oh yeah. It's
You know,
like,
and you'd
can't-
stare in
can't
his
read him, yeah.
eyes. You know, my mother like wasn't just that way at all. You know,
Yeah.
and it's like, but he was, and it was just sort of like, oh my God,
You
you
just
know.
don't know what they're.
You
Yeah.
know, and also like Colorado, like in the Old West, I mean, tall tales, that was
Yeah.
like a form of entertainment, which kind of like permeates a lot of our history. But then
This is
what's
true.
even worse is like some of the tall tales aren't even tall enough because it was really actually worse. And you're like, holy cow.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's all good. We survived.
Yeah, it's fine.
It's
Yeah.
like, so.
I love my dad. If he watches this, he'll probably laugh, but he very much like loves the Wild West. Like
Yep.
Wyatt Earp. Man
Yeah.
is obsessed with Wyatt Earp. He like embodies Wyatt Earp. He's got the mustache.
Oh, yeah.
He used to play him at the Cheyenne Frontier Days,
Oh,
like at the
fun.
Old
Yeah.
West town.
Yeah.
And I just be sitting there for like hours as like an 8-year-old, and he's like dressed up, you know, with his cowboy cuffs and his, you know, the flat hat and everything, and I'm just sitting there on a picnic table just waiting. Like, there he is. you
Yeah,
know?
that's my
Um,
dad over
So,
there.
but he had me like watch. I mean, I grew up with old westerns and
Yep.
just probably some of the same
Yeah.
tales and stuff, and it is interesting. I appreciate it more now as an adult. Back then,
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, Dad, you know, oh my gosh, this is." He'd go to Walmart in his cowboy cuffs, and I'm like, "Oh, Dad, you're so embarrassing," you know. And now I'm like, "It is cool."
Well,
It's cool.
I remember in Golden, like we only had, we had Safeway and King Supers, different
Yeah.
ends of town. And I remember we were going like, I guess, to whatever one was like just down the hill from us. And there was some guy who was honestly like like a real honest to God cowboy, you know, just
Yeah.
covered like in dirt, kind of bow legs going towards the milk aisle and stuff like that. And my mom's like, now that's a real one.
Yeah.
Because,
Oh,
you know,
cute.
because
Yeah.
like you get like the tourists with like
Oh,
fancy
yes.
hats. And what is that? All hat and no cattle type
Yeah.
of thing,
Yes,
you know,
this
type
is
of
true
thing.
as well, yeah.
But, you know, he looked tired, he was dirty, he
tired,
was
that's the big
hot, you
thing.
know, type
Yeah.
of thing. And it's like, yeah, that's somebody who just
That's somebody.
like was working out on a ranch and just came in to get supplies. So
Some
that's
milk,
what we're
yeah.
doing. So
Absolutely. Absolutely. What was kind of the first historical like story you heard that you're like, oh wow, this is what I want to do?
So this is another weird story, but I was on my way to a concert with a friend, and I'm probably, well, I still am, she's still alive, but probably like 10 or 15 years younger than her. And we were going to something like at Swallow Hill or whatever, and we're driving over the Denver viaducts, like towards Union Station, which no longer really exists in that configuration.
Yeah.
And I don't know what we were talking about, but she's like, yeah, there's bad blood in my dad's family. His great aunt was a second-rate madam, and her nieces were hooking for her, and they had saloons, and people died, blah, blah, blah. And I just remember just turning like this, thinking, that is the most interesting thing I've heard, because my family was like normal by comparison. You know what I mean? I'm like, holy cow.
Yeah.
There are really people that were related to prostitutes and ran saloons. Like I'd never really equated that, you know, these were somebody's family, and there she was.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that is the most fascinating thing. And I was always pestering her whole family for questions. And I'm like, I'm going to write a book, you know.
Is this
and like
Market Street Madam?
Uh-huh.
Oh, I have them both. I have the first one, I forget what you said it was called.
It was the
good
Beaten
old
Territory, and then it became Market Street
Street
Madam,
Madam.
and then the Bad Old Days of Colorado,
I
and the
have
Fringes. You've got a lot of stuff, yeah.
So I'll have to pass them on to
Okay.
you.
I'd love
Yeah.
to. That sounds cool.
But it was just so interesting. And she said how one of the women died. And I thought, no way, no way. So like, you know, so I'm bugging this whole family, like, tell me stories. And they're like, well, we're not going to tell you until some aunt and uncle pass on. And I'm like, oh my God. So I had to wait for these poor people to pass on. And then I'm like, all right, great, let's talk. And then they thought at that point, they realized that I was serious. And, you know, I had my degree and I probably could write, you know, and they're like, we don't know anything. I'm like, oh, you guys. So I started it with nonfiction, and then like it dried up, and it wasn't doing what I wanted it to do. I wanted people to see the interior lives, not like, oh baby, you know, this is like sex and stuff. Like, how do they feel? I mean, it's just such a cold, isolating profession in a weird way. And that's what I wanted. So I'm like, fine, I'm making it fiction, all this stuff, and I'm just doing what I want with the story.
Yeah.
Trying to stick to the bones that they told me before they knew I was going to do anything with it. And, you know, I gave them a copy, you know, when it came done, or a couple of copies, and they loved it. Aww. And they're like, did we tell you the one about, you know, and I'm like, no, you guys, the book is published, you know, but it turns out like she actually was worse than even that book. And she went on to become the first woman arrested during Prohibition for bootlegging.
Wow.
And then she shot her living husband and stuff. So I mean, there's a whole other book there. So I just need to get my act together and write it. But you know, they're like, well, we always thought like the murder went this way.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah, but you know, it's like the characters started talking to me, and then I was trying to tag in with events that actually did happen in Denver that I could prove.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
Shifted it over that way. And since they weren't going to tell me,
you did.
I did my own thing, you know. So that was the first time that, like, you know.
Yeah.
And I was thinking as I was driving up now, when I don't always know a book's coming, but I was just down in Trinidad and Walsenburg and Levita, down like way south and stuff, visiting with people and stuff. And now I'm kind of getting worked up about like some of the labor movement stuff. And I'm like, oh my God. So I know I'm doing a book for that, and they're all really happy. And so I'm going to hurry, because some of these people are kind of old, like 92 and stuff. So I'm going to try. But I mean, it's just kind of like, if something intrigues me, I think how I process it and work it out is I do a book.
Yeah.
And I honestly think that's how I do it. So, you know, but
that is so cool.
it's so weird though. It's just so randomly weird. You know, it's just like, I don't know. Like my mom said I fell off the bed when I was like really young and stuff and hit my head. So that might be it. So
is your mom still around?
No, she's not. You know, so I'm like the lone banana out of the family and stuff like that. So it's just kind of like, that's crazy, Randy. She's coming over. It's like everybody.
I love it. That's
yes.
oh my gosh. That's funny. So there's the Beaten Territory, the
Yep.
Market Street Madam.
And that's all one and the same
Okay.
because what happened is it came out in hardback, which was
Yeah.
great. That was
Yeah.
my first thing. And, if anybody out there wants to be an author, I mean, I really would suggest you go to writers' conferences because that's really where you meet like agents and editors and other people how to do the craft.
Yeah.
But my pitch was so bad, I Googled how do you do a pitch and stuff, and it was so bad that the woman remembered me when the book finally got done, and I had a contract 2 weeks later. But like she was like going, "Yes, dear, you can get it out," and I was getting
Yeah.
it all bungled up and stuff like that. And yeah, she remembered me, and that was
wow.
it. And then another publisher bought the paperback rights, and so
Okay.
that's why there's 2 different names, which I wasn't too thrilled about. But you know
Gotcha.
what?
Gotcha.
After you sign a contract, you really have no control anymore. It just
Really?
goes what they're going to do.
Whatever they're gonna do.
Yep.
Dang it.
Yeah,
Dang
so
it.
those are the first, and then the Bad Old Days of Colorado, which I
Yeah.
took a lot of the research I'd done for the first and put it into nonfiction.
Yeah.
And then that publisher wanted the Bad Old Days of Montana,
Uh-huh.
and I'm like, don't you want someone from Montana to write it? And they're like, we like you, but it really should have been a Montana author.
Yeah.
So I've kind of learned a little bit more respect for boundaries, just because, I mean, everybody's nice and they'll share my stories or their stories, but it's still, there's something about the Bad Old Days of Colorado that feels more immediate and more accurate just because, I've heard it from my grandparents, I've heard it from my
Absolutely.
great-grandparents,
From
the
here, yeah.
crazy neighbors next door, whatever you've got,
Yeah.
And I think it would have benefited the Montana book had it been written by a Montana author.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I'm learning.
Yeah.
Learning.
Perspectives,
Yeah,
for sure.
totally.
For sure. Is there one called On the Fringes?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
That is, speaking of ghosts and stuff, that is about a clairvoyant, a mining swindle, and a fresh start. And how I got that idea was I was up at the Homestead House in Cripple Creek, which is a brothel museum, like behind the casinos.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I wanna go
you
there.
gotta go
There.
there.
Field
Oh
trip,
my
man.
Yeah,
gosh,
field
yes.
trip.
There we go.
Well, and it was so interesting because like they had this building and they knew it had been a brothel, and some old lady was like helping them, like, and she's like, well, stuff goes here and there and there, and they never knew who she was until like they finished it, and turned out she had worked there at one point in time.
Oh
So
gosh,
this
I
is-
get goosebumps
I
all
know.
over.
But then they had like a page out of a phone book, and we got phones much earlier than I realized, like in the 1880s or something like that. It's older than I thought, right?
Yeah,
And they
yeah.
have this page under this glass, and I'm just looking at it, and it says clairvoyant and a phone number, and I'm like, I want to know who that is, and that's how On the Fringes came about. But that was just a weird thing, where you're just kind
Yeah.
of like
Wow.
looking at it. Yeah. And I'm just like, well, who the hell is that? And then I started trying to figure out clairvoyance, which was like impossible. I drove up to this one woman in Torrington, Wyoming, because she's like, she's related to somebody I know and stuff. And I was asking her about that. And she's like, well, it's just a feeling. I'm like, well, if I write it like this, does that make sense? She's like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I did a field trip up to Torrington and, and just even that back road,
Yes.
between Cheyenne and Torrington, that was like, Devil's Rope, which is it was in an anthology, but it's just sort of like when you're driving, you look around and you're like, who settled out here? I mean,
Yes.
this
I
is
can't even
not
imagine.
going to be
Yeah.
easy. I mean, the
No.
wind, it's empty.
The snow, everything.
Yeah,
the
you were
heat,
just,
you're
just on your own,
Yeah.
really for your family or whatever you've got. I mean, so it's just
Absolutely.
kind of like, I was at one writer's conference, which still strikes me funny, and she turned out to be a really good friend, but I remember her looking out in Billings, like they have all those rock formations if you've been up there, and she's, I can't help but think the landscape has something to do about it, and I'm just like, because she's from Tennessee, and I'm like, landscape has everything to
Yeah.
do with this, because you were always against the elements. You're
Absolutely.
always against it.
Think
Even
about
now,
Now,
I can't
yeah.
imagine back then. Yeah, that's crazy.
I know. So it's just kind of amazing. So it's just stuff like that. Then it kind of pokes at me, and I want a story so I can process who lived out here, who is the clairvoyant.
Yeah.
But see, the thing about the clairvoyant that I thought was so interesting is when I started studying, these people would just kind of work out of hotels and they'd move around. So they'd be like, I can tell you, you just need to drill 3 feet down further and you'll find your vein of gold. Well, by the time the guy got 3 feet dug out, that clairvoyant was like,
long
you know,
gone.
in Des Moines or
Yeah.
something, you know what I mean? You know, so they didn't care. But like phones were a big deal. So like whoever had a phone and they were in the phone book and they didn't move around, that meant that person had
was
confidence.
pretty solid, yeah.
Yeah, in their
Right.
abilities and stuff. So I was
That
like,
is
that
so
is really
crazy.
interesting.
Awesome.
So
That
I
is.
could have been a clairvoyant back in the day.
Yeah.
Undoubtedly.
Undoubtedly,
Yes,
she
ma'am.
says.
wow.
Heck yeah.
So since we're telling weird stories,
Yes.
on the Market Street in Madam, that same family had a, not surprisingly, clairvoyance, and they're in Denver, lived in Denver, right?
Wow.
Uh-huh.
And it was the Depression, and they were hungry, big Irish Catholic family, and they, you know,
Yeah.
and this policeman comes in and wants his fortune read, you know, and, you know, the mother does the, you know, line my palms with silver and stuff like that, and he does, and she's like, you know, she looks at his hand, and she looks at her silver, and she's like, oh, I don't know why I can't do it, you know, squish her hand, all this sort of stuff. And she ended up sending him out, you know, without giving him his money back, just sending him out.
Yeah.
And the kids were like, were hysterical because that was like meat. You know, they would have had dinner that night. And they're like, why didn't you just make something up? And she's like, I won't take money from a dead man. And sure enough, that guy died on the beat that night. So I think, you know, that's a real story.
Smokes, man. That's
Wow.
crazy.
I know. So when some of these books come out, which is really funny, Market Street Madam / Beaten Territory, just
Yeah.
Denver just bought it. Colorado just bought it. Everybody wanted to know. I was like Ancestry.com for Denver's
Seriously?
underworld for at least a year and a half. My junk mail was so much fun. You would just go in and there'd be these wild things like, I'm related to this person, or you're our family. I you know, and I just got like wild stories from people. It was just awesome. I'm like,
very
no, but
interesting.
I can give you this person's email, and they're
Yeah.
probably your second cousin or something, twice removed. I
Yeah,
don't
something,
know.
yeah,
I
something
don't
along
know.
the lines.
But it
Oh
was
my
hysterical.
gosh.
It was funny. It was just downright funny.
That's crazy.
I
Can you
know.
imagine? You're just like reading and you're like,
Yeah.
let me check your pulse really quick.
Yeah, really.
Not there. Yeah.
It's like,
Wow.
Oh my gosh, go away. Yeah, no, it's fine. Go, go.
Outside.
Great fortune for you. Get out. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
That's super crazy.
Oh man. And so the On the Fringes, it got selected by the Molly Brown House Book Club. That's huge. What did that mean to you? That's so cool.
Well, believe it or not, a lot of mine go that way. They go to History Colorado and Molly Brown House. So they've been very kind. They can't really support individual authors per se, but they can give you this. And it gives you a bit of street cred, like you're not just this random lunatic telling like these wild stories where you're just kind of like, oh, you better watch what she says. It could be really weird, you know, type of thing. So it was nice. It was really nice. It kind of, you know, it kind of told me I was on the right path, right?
For sure.
And that was like kind of a deal I made when, you know, like with the universe, when I got, you know, I'm like, if this book gets published, I promise I will go talk at every library or every small museum in Colorado that asked me if I can make it happen. And I've kept my end of the bargain, and Colorado has kept their end of the bargain, you know, so I've been very supported through this whole thing.
That's cool.
It's so bizarre. It's really bizarre because I hear all these other people going, oh my God, it's so lonely. And I'm like, lonely? I mean, I need more people doing this than I could anywhere else. Yeah. And I'm just like, and they're interesting and nice and fun. And it's all good.
Cool. That would be cool to go to museums and libraries and stuff. That's interesting. Yeah.
It is. And what's really fun is you get like the 92-year-olds, you know, and they're like nostalgia. But sometimes you get like the younger ones. And so I met this young kid down in Trinidad. And he's like 17, and he's going to be a history major.
Wow.
And I'm just like, oh, that's so wonderful. So he's giving like tours of this mining museum, and you know, just like in a spare time. I know. So you kind of like see this
He's
other
a reincarnated soul,
without
a doubt. Oh my gosh.
You know, and it's just kind of like, you know, I'm like, oh, I was a history major, you know, here don't do what I did, do it this way, you know, and like if the kid remembers, great. If he doesn't, it doesn't matter. I mean, he's doing it. So I mean, you meet all sorts of people, and you meet a lot of people who've moved into the state who really want to know, you know, and that's why I wrote The Bad Old Days of Colorado, because I really wanted to have a Colorado lens telling Colorado history, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And, you know, we've got it all.
Yeah, we do.
You know, and I'm not proud of all of it. Nobody is. But you know what I mean? But it's like still through a Colorado lens.
Right.
And I really wanted to have that. And now that I'm reading some books on like the coal and labor wars, a lot of those people who are writing them aren't from Colorado. And I'm reading it and I'm like, well, that's wrong.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, that's not what they're telling me down there.
Yeah.
And I think what the deal is, and I really think this is like probably true for any state or any place, when you're where you're from, you get a better level of access to like people that live there too, because somehow we all recognize each other in a way, and they will tell you more what they're thinking, or they will tell you more their history.
Yeah.
And they're not worried about putting a filter on it as to how I react to it. They're just
Right.
telling me, you know, and that's for a historian or a writer, that's what we want.
That's what you want. Yeah,
You
for
know,
sure.
and then I'll filter, not filter, whatever, you know, make a whole weird story out of it. And they're like, I never said that. So, but yeah, for nonfiction, I keep it really straight.
Really
so,
straightforward,
yeah.
for sure. No, that makes sense. That
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
What other awards have you won? Because I know you have won a few different
Well,
ones as well.
The Western Horse is my first national book, and it was featured in Cowgirl Magazine, True West, Big Sky Journal, and
Oh my
Western
gosh.
Living. So
That's
it's
so
just like,
cool.
whoa.
Wow.
And PBS was kind of like nice and edging around, and I was like, did an interview, but it didn't go
Yeah.
anywhere because
Oh.
somebody had a bigger horse book come out like 2
Aw.
weeks before. I'm like, oh, darn it. But I like my horse book. So that is, you know, like the publisher is great. They're like,
Yeah.
what do you have? And I'm like, oh, I don't have anything. They're like, all right, what do you want to do? And I'm like, oh, I want to write a horse book that I would like to read. And so it's just history of the horse, right? So it's not like, you know, how to bomb-proof your horse, which is what I need to read or something like that, you know, type of thing. But, you know, it's not so much like, you know, do this or do that. It's just like, what is their contribution to the West?
Right.
Or
That's
why are
cool.
they so close to people's hearts? Or,
Yeah.
and, you know, it's like the fire horse stories, just like, you know, I was about sitting there like weeping, you know, because like they'd retire out, you know, and they'd hear the fire bell. And if they were like in the stables
Yes.
nearby, they would just come reporting in for duty if they
Yes.
weren't penned up. And it's like, oh, they're just so brilliant.
That's crazy.
I know. So
Yes.
it's like stuff like that, you know, it's
Yeah.
just
I
like,
have to get a copy of that one.
that's what I should have brought, huh? Sorry.
It's okay. I know where to find you.
Okay,
No,
good.
yes.
Yeah.
I remember reading, that was one of my favorite books as a kid. I don't remember what it was called. I can like see the cover, but it was like a horse like jumping through flames, and it was literally about something like that. And this little girl, they like moved to New York or somewhere like that, and this fire horse was there, and it had gotten burned so badly they were going to euthanize it, and she like takes it and doctors it, and it is just, oh, it gives me goosebumps. I've reread it like so many
know.
times. It's a fictional story, but just you don't even realize what horses used to do.
Well, that's
Like, it's just crazy. I tell mine that all the time. I'm like, do
you're
you
lucky
even
this is
realize
century
You got
you're
such a
used
bougie
to
life.
do.
Yeah.
I know, you were in
You
the
got
right
such a
century,
bougie.
Yes,
dude.
you lucked out, because man, yeah.
It's sort of
Yeah.
like what your parents used to tell you, or your grandparents. I
Yeah.
had to walk to school in 5 miles, and the
Yes.
snow was 10 feet deep, and all you could see was like a trail, you know, type of thing. But
We think this life is so hard because, you know, there's so much demand with all the technology
Yeah,
and, you
for
know,
sure.
just
right.
work. But when you look back at the past generations, it was by far no bed of roses. And,
No,
you know,
no.
it was just survival.
I
and-
think
Yeah.
it was simpler in some way, but like I don't know, because I was thinking of this the other day. Like I feel stressed out with technology and updates and all this kind of stuff. It's just kind of a pain. But like, were they stressed out at the time? I have a feeling they were, but they were more worried about the weather.
Yeah.
Or did they have enough food?
Yes.
You know, I mean, and
Absolutely.
these are
Just
like,
basic
basic
necessities,
things.
basic survival necessities.
you know, and it's
or
just kinda-
sickness. You know,
or
I think of
sickness,
that
yeah.
a lot too. Like just all the sickness and stuff that you know,
Oh, yeah.
it's just crazy. Yeah. But I do think of that often. Like there's this TikTok going around that it's like, would you ride your horse into battle? And I look at my 3 and I'm like, y'all are
Hell
sissies.
no.
There's no way you would not. I would not ride any of you into
No.
battle. Are you kidding me? Yeah.
So I did this. I always do this talk, but like the horse book, like I found out the cavalry started during Black Hawk's War, like on the East
Oh,
Coast.
Okay.
Like 1823. I hope I got the date right. But here's the thing. They would draft her. These farmers would come to fight.
Yeah.
Maybe they had a horse with them. Maybe they didn't. But if they brought a horse, of course it wasn't their good horse. So you were
Right.
getting like, oh, God only knows, like a ragtag army at best, you know?
Yes.
And,
Yeah.
and the whole cavalry always had problems. And I always thought cavalry would know how to ride a horse, right?
Yeah,
That
right.
seemed like
You'd think, yeah.
they didn't.
Oh,
And
man.
so commanders are like, I don't care what else these guys can do. If you can get me ones that can ride a horse and like swimming across the river,
Yeah.
I'll count it good.
Yeah.
Type of
Oh
a thing.
my
And it's just like all
gosh.
these things I never knew. It's just like,
Uh-huh.
whoa, you know, and you're
That's
just reading it
wild.
from like people's letters and stuff.
Yeah.
It's like people didn't
Wow.
always
Oh,
know
how
how to ride
fun.
horses. What
Yeah.
the heck?
Just got thrown on one day. They're
Yeah, yeah,
"Here
and
you
then they
go."
were complaining on the quality of them and all this.
Oh.
But you know, it's sort of like a writer. It's like, you know, if I sit there going, "Well, the horse is terrible. The horse is terrible." Well, maybe I'm not writing it right.
Yeah, this
You
is
know what
true.
I mean? Or
This is true.
it could be the horse is terrible. But
yes,
if I'm
but-
always the common denominator, that just means I don't know how to ride.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just crazy. Like even the war horses that I mean, you see the old like with the masks.
I
and
can't
stuff.
do that. I can't go
like,
there. I
yeah,
just
it's
can't do it.
crazy to
It just
me.
is too upsetting.
It
I did a
is.
chapter on like the ranches and the breeding of the horses that were
Mhm.
sent to the Boer War, World War One.
Yeah,
I don't want to go into the
I don't blame
battles.
you.
I don't
It's
want
a
to.
lot.
It's just
It's
like,
a lot to unpack. Like,
well,
yeah.
I can't.
Yeah.
You know, and it's
Yeah.
like you see pictures of them, like, you know, and I really like horses, and you know, it's just kind of like, I guess I think humans have more agency. They can control things, and a horse just does what it's told. So
Right.
I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm
No,
just
for sure.
not going there.
For sure. Yeah, I do not blame you.
What of your books felt the most personal to write?
You know, I don't know. And
Yeah.
I was going to say Market Street Madam just because like it had just such a
It's
whole
his friend,
story.
yeah,
It was like,
uh-huh.
But I think there's always a part of me in everything that I write.
Yeah.
But I think when people say, oh, the person's first book, they're writing about themselves, and beginners do that a lot.
Mm.
I can honestly say I don't think I've done that, but I can see traces of myself and everything, you know,
Yeah.
because like, you know, I wasn't an Old West prostitute, you know, I'm not a brand inspector, you know, I'm not a horse.
Yeah, so, you
it's
know,
Not
just
a
like,
bootlegger.
yeah, not a bootlegger, you know, but I can see like, you
Mm.
know, like money. I'm good with money. So I could see like how aspects of a madam's personality could fit into
Connect,
mine. I'd be
yeah.
like going, whoa, wait a minute, you know, money and stuff like that.
Yeah.
The Dark Range series was a series I was asked to write, and Chris Whitney was the brand commissioner a couple of years back, and he was kind. I had to be checked out by this woman named Olga because I sent him an email going, I'm writing a book about brand inspectors, you know, and they had to check, you know, to see like if I'm just a real lunatic or just a random lunatic or whatever. But this nice woman called Olga called, and I explained to her what I was doing and how this all went. And he would talk to me, and he would make his brand inspectors available to answer my questions.
Wow, that's
I
cool.
met a brand inspector here at one of the events you had out in the
Uh-huh.
parking lot.
Oh,
And he
yeah.
was
Nice.
great.
Do you remember
know,
his name?
maybe last name was Peterson, maybe. Like,
trying to
oh gosh,
remember.
maybe 50, and I think
50.
blonde. But he was,
Blonde.
and he used to do like animal protection before he was
I wonder if
doing.
it was Mike.
Maybe.
Yeah,
You
he's
know,
a good guy. Yeah,
it-
we've got some good brand inspectors out here.
Yeah, and he's very nice, you know. And so that was kind of a fun series to do because it was
Yeah.
about like a woman who became a brand inspector because she could read brands, but like they kind of gave her a choice in life because she was from like one of those ranches, you know, like the scary ones where they're like posted, no trespassers, will
Mhm.
shoot, those type of people.
Yeah.
She was kind of from one of those outfits, you know, and just they'd been there for a long time, but you know, they realized she could read brands, so they gave her choice, you know, we need like help, do you want to try this or whatever.
Yeah.
And so I just felt like Chris Whitney was nice, maybe Mike was nice.
Yeah.
People were really nice, but the whole theme of that series was scratch the surface of the modern day West, and the Old West is right there. Because I mean, a lot of us still know how to shoot guns.
Yeah.
A lot of us know how to ride horses. A lot of us, we sort of live by the code of the West, such as it may be. It was
Right.
not what my father told me, that because we are from Colorado, we are honest, forthright, upstanding, we always do the right thing. That
Yeah.
turned out not to be so true.
Right.
But
Right.
theoretically, it should be that way,
Yeah.
right?
For sure. No,
So
for
yeah,
sure.
so that was kind of fun to do. So it's just kind of how the West is changing, as people move in, as big money keeps coming in. It's like kind of the growth stress from some of that.
Some
And I
of
mean,
that, yeah.
so I made up my own town and I made up my own county because I didn't want to get in any,
Yes.
range wars with
Range
crabby
wars, yeah.
people, but it was kind of funny because I was really right about crumbling. But anyhow, so it was just kind of fun because I
love it.
love that town, and I
Yeah,
just
it
think
is
the rim
cool.
rocks are so cool,
Mhm.
and you could just see outlaws there, and it's just, it's still very
Wow.
how it is, but then they
Yeah.
also have that private airstrip there, and you go
Uh-huh.
back off the way, and you've got like the big McMansions, and and you look at somebody's ranch for sale, and like a real estate office where it's just it's posted, and here's my cell phone number and stuff, and it's like some whacked out amount of money, and it's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
who buys this? Well, there's people who do.
There is a lot of people that do. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy for sure.
And then
especially in those areas. You're like, why, yeah.
Why it's pretty, but like
Yeah.
I was talking to some locals up in Fairplay, and like I guess a lot of people are hired to go check on some of these places that are far back, and they're like, we can't even get there in the winter on snowmobiles. So like,
No,
what are they
it's-
expecting us to
Wow.
do?
Fairplay is absolutely beautiful. I've ran in the rodeo a couple times up there, and man, every time you just pull down in there. And
I
that-
know.
it's breathtaking. The people are so nice. But,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's
no.
hard. It's higher up
Yeah.
than you'd think.
It
It's about the
is.
same as Leadville.
It really is, and it's
So-
in that valley, and it's
It's
like
so
there's
beautiful,
nothing out
but-
there. Yeah, it's beautiful, but
It would have been so hard just to be living out there.
oh yeah,
And they've got a thing now, the Rocky Mountain Land Library in Garrow,
okay.
driving through Fairplay. And that is just the coolest idea. They took an old ranch called Buffalo Peaks, and somehow they got a lease on it. And there's like a lot of books out there. They have like lecturers, they have ecologists, all this type of thing, poets out there, and
That's
they,
wild.
yeah. And if you happen to go by when it's open, you're welcome to go in, and it's just awesome,
Oh,
So I
that's
mean,
crazy.
but that is just such a Colorado thing,
Yeah.
again, to do. It's odd. It's in the middle of nowhere, and it's wonderful,
Yeah.
which is kind of how I think of our state sometimes.
yeah, a little random, but
Yeah, it's really
cool,
random. It can be really random, but it's
Yeah.
just wonderful.
Oh my gosh. Well, along those same lines, I know you've done some like postgraduate research at Trinity College.
Yep.
So how did that kind of help shape all this, or how did that affect your
Well,
storytelling?
So when I went there, I was wildly in over my head, only I didn't know it, right? So that's like the worst kind, when you think you've got it and you really don't have it, right? So I go there, and I'd never been to Ireland before, no idea. You walk in, and it's like something out of a movie set, and I'm
Oh, I
like,
can't even
oh my
imagine.
God, what have I done? Because it's like, the establishment, type of thing. And I had trouble with the accents.
Oh yeah.
So
that
like
would be
my
hard.
first lecture, the guy had like a beard and a thick accent. I mean, I got the whole assignment wrong. These people are sitting with me like she's an idiot, because I was like, I thought they said research who'd married who in these estates. So I'm like writing this stuff. It had nothing to do with anything that they wanted. They wanted like land sizes and stuff like that.
shoot.
And people are like throwing me their papers, and I'm looking down going, that's not how I did it, type of thing. And, but how that happened was they never gave us reading lists like they do in American universities. And they're like, well, there's a library, go start reading. I mean, the library is massive. And I was like, read what? And they're like, start reading. And I think that was really good for me once I recovered from the initial shock of it all. Well, yeah, and you had to fill out pieces of paper telling what book you wanted. You couldn't just go get stuff off the shelf. So it was like this whole different system. I was just totally outclassed. But you learn some tricks, right? When you're going to sink or swim, you learn something, you know, and I learned like, okay, if the professor had a published paper, you read what he wrote, you know, that's a real good one for your test. But also just like you kind of start reading random stuff and you kind of get into a system in your head that's not anybody inflicting it upon you, just like how you do it. And I think that was a really, really valuable skill just for me to learn how to do that. And then I came back and then I started taking writing classes because, you know, I was used to writing history papers. And that was all well and good, but wanted to write a book. And I thought I would just be brilliant at it, right? Always just let's aim high, you know, and it was awful. And I'm like, what is wrong with me? You know, I can't do it. So, I mean, I started taking classes and I'm glad I did that. You know, but it wasn't always easy, even that, because like they told us on the first day and I wasn't listening right. But they said, you can bring in what you think is good that you've written and we can critique it, or you can bring in what you thought was bad. So everybody else was bringing in their good stuff and I was bringing in my worst stuff because I wanted help with it. So they thought I was like absolutely the worst writer by far in the whole program. It's like, they'd be like, is she okay? You know, type of thing. And then they had like a writers group afterwards and they did not invite me to be in it because I wasn't good enough. Well, I'm just laughing. But it took like years till I realized what, you know, because I was like, I wasn't that bad, was I? Well, probably I was, because I was giving them my worst stuff to help me. So it's just kind of like, how do you do it, right? How do you know, are you going to really show people your underwear or are you not going to show them your underwear type of thing? I was like flashing my underwear going, hey, you know, no, this is not good. But so I think that's okay. That was like, it was a bruising experience, but sometimes I learn best like by things that don't go really terribly well. And then if I stick with it, if I stick with it and I'm like, get my heels down in the dirt and say, you know, I'm gonna persevere till I get this. I don't have to like it. I don't have to do it forever, but I'm gonna master this, you know. And I did. It turned out like I did, and I just like laughed. You know, I think it's still wildly funny. And then. But then I see all these people now, because sometimes I teach at like writers' conferences or like, you know, community college stuff. I'll teach a bit at times. And so many people are not willing to do that. Like there's ways to do things, you know, there's ways to do math, there's, you know, but they don't want to do it because they're like, well, I'm an artist. This is my art form. And I don't really know how to do that. It's like, it's not... You never want to crush somebody's soul is kind of what I think about the whole thing. You just don't want to do that. But if they have the drive and they want to be successful, there are a few guidelines, like a driver's test, you know, that you need to kind of go that way if you're really going to do it. So, so I think that's what it taught me, like how to not give up in the face of overwhelming academia.
Yes, for sure.
And how to stick to my guns.
That would be crazy.
It was, I still like going, I still just can't believe I did that. And my dad couldn't believe I did that.
You were doing it either,
Yeah, he told me, he's like, well, I paid for round one, meaning graduate school. He's like, you're paying for round two. And I had like 4 jobs. Like I was grading papers. I was, you know, working in a bar. I had my day job. I mean, I was doing all this stuff just to get money, for the money to do it. Wow. And that was a good thing too, because I found that when Dad paid, you know, I'd skip a class, I'd go do this,
when
I'd go
you
do
were
that.
earning it was different.
It sure was, you know, and then I was just like, I'm not missing that class, you know, type of thing. So
and how long were you there for?
I was only there 1.5 years.
That's still, I mean,
it was
a good time.
Yep, and I didn't finish there. I mean, they always have to take me back, which I just think is hysterically funny because I just didn't finish, right? But people weren't getting jobs there, and I came back here to Colorado, got a job at Security Life of Denver, woohoo, insurance, you know, and I was making not good money, but you know, more money than I'd make in Ireland. And my dad was like, well, you know, the further on you go in the Irish system, the harder it's going to be for you to come back home grades are different, all this stuff is different. What do you want to be? And it's like, Colorado's pretty good. I think I'm going to stay here. So then it's paid off,
Absolutely.
and Ireland's great. Ireland's really fine. But, some of their battles are not my battles. And just right here, some of my battles aren't their battles.
Right.
So it's just kind of like,
Makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes sense. No, for sure. What is like the weirdest or most disturbing historical fact that you've kind of come about that has really stuck with you? I know we've touched on a few different stories, but what's one that really just stands out?
Boy, historical. Well, I guess I could tell you sort of an anecdote. And this is probably it. The first article I ever remember reading in the Denver Post that really struck with me. I mean, I was living in Golden. I can see it like my dining room table, my parents' dining room table. Is somebody on the Eastern Plains somewhere passed away, and their kids or grandkids were going through their stuff, and they realized by artifacts they found that they had been part of the cavalry that went to Sand Creek Massacre. They could tell by what they found.
Yeah.
And that totally destroyed that poor man's life. He just felt so guilty. There was a whole big article. I would love to read that article again.
Yeah.
But that has stuck with me because I think that is the time where I felt, and at the time I guess I hadn't really thought about it that deeply, but because I was young, but it's like the long reach of history. So somebody could feel shame or horror for something that happened 100 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's could
huge.
be. And I just thought, and then that kind of gives you the idea that, your actions sometimes live longer than you do.
Yeah.
So I think that was not a fun thing, but it was a very poignant thing.
Yeah. Very real thing.
Very, very real thing. And so that has always kind of sparked my interest, like in Silas Sewell, or Soul, I guess a lot of people pronounce it, I don't know which is right, but he's the guy who wouldn't let his men participate in the massacre. He held them back and said, this is not civilized warfare, we're not doing it.
Yeah.
And he was later assassinated on the street in Denver by Shivington's cronies.
Oh my gosh. That's
So
crazy.
just that the whole thing, so he did the right thing and paid for his life. The other guy, I don't know what the other guy did, who he was, but his grandson or whatever had to kind of come to a moral reckoning. How do you deal with some history?
Yeah.
And I just feel it's just so interesting.
That is.
It's just so I think that's why, I think really the good message in all of that is, we have choices a lot of times, and just to really try to do what you think is right.
Absolutely.
I think that's, even if it's hard at the time,
Even if it's hard,
just really, really try to do what you personally think is right,
Right.
because you have to live with you, and there are consequences.
Absolutely.
So it's just kind of like, so I
never
thought that
of
was
it that way,
interesting.
even after so many years, what it could still do. Yeah.
Yeah, they
Wow.
found these things, and it was just kind of horrific for this, devastating.
Yeah.
And that would happen, I think, with people who's fought in World War II. I mean, there's just stuff out there. It's just what do you do
Yeah.
that's right?
Absolutely.
And that's what I'd kind of like to see in the next couple books I'm doing. I'm really going to dedicate them to people who have a good sense of fair play and who will do what is right.
Absolutely.
Even when it's not easy or it's not comfortable. Just, some of the people with the strangest stories who actually did the right thing are just my heroes.
Heroes, yeah.
And they're very, they've fallen from sight in history, but I'm like, well, that was a good person.
Yeah. Highlight
So-
more them than like
Yeah.
the bad guys.
Oh yeah, and I don't
Yeah.
I never really write about wealthy people, like
Yeah.
famous wealthy people, because
Yeah. They're fine. Yeah.
they're fine, they're
Yeah.
famous, they're wealthy, everybody knows who they are. But what about the old lady who raises the 14 kids that didn't belong to her?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
who's she?
Yeah.
I want to know about her. I don't care about the people in the limousines, type of thing.
Yeah.
I want to know about her. Or I want to know what those kids did or something
Yeah.
like that. So.
No, I like that, telling kind of a different story that nobody else would. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think it gives more hope to people too. And I think right now people need decency and hope and civility.
Yeah.
That's what I honestly think.
Seriously.
It's just like, I don't care who's just we can all treat each other nicely. We
Oh,
just
please,
don't,
yes.
and the politicians, they don't know us.
Yeah.
your neighbor with your different politics will pull you out of a snowdrift, but like, whoever the powers that be aren't going to slow down to pull you out of a snowdrift.
This
So,
is true.
I mean, I'm just going to try to be decent.
Yeah, I love it. No, that's
Yes.
good. You explore lots of stuff, right?
I do, and the scarier the better sometimes.
I felt that. I felt that in you.
know.
I'm like, she's gotta love it. Yeah.
I cannot help myself. I really do.
Yes, it
I
is
don't
interesting.
want to help myself either.
Right.
I want to help myself find these places,
Yes,
type of
yeah.
thing. But
It's intriguing.
I lived in Golden. There was like my first apartment by myself, $250 a month above this art gallery, right? And I was all happy with it. And
$250
$50 a
Mine was
month.
240 in Arizona. Yes,
Holy
darling.
smokes.
Two
That's a
bedroom.
thing.
A two bedroom.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh my
This
God.
was one
This is
bedroom,
crazy.
bathroom down the hall.
Down
But
the
anyhow,
hall. Still though.
So,
Dang.
it's like I got there, got all my stuff in. It was really cute and all this sort of stuff. And I swore to God it was haunted.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, I'm just being weird again because I had to sleep with the lights on. And normally I don't have to sleep with the lights on. But like doors would open and stuff like that. So same family of Market Street, Madam. I bring one of them over. Don't tell them what my problem is. Just bring them in the house. And they're like, ye gods, this place is haunted. Don't worry, Randy. They like you. And I'm like,
They're
oh,
like they.
Yeah, I'm like, okay. And so one morning, I'm just getting ready to go to work. It's like 8:30. I'm brushing my teeth and stuff.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what happened, but I thought somebody was downstairs. So I called the police. Golden used to be much smaller. So they called my dad or my parents because like they didn't know my phone number and didn't have tracing and stuff. And my dad's like, are you all right? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine, but the police. He's like, stop talking. Go downstairs and let them in. Because I'd seen the searchlights because it was still dark because it was winter, right?
Wow.
So I go downstairs and my dad stays on the phone and I go down and let them in. And they comb that place from top to bottom. And I'm like, this is so weird. And I was late to work and all the sort of problems, But what the problem was is there were footprints in the snowdrift coming through into the house, but nobody was there.
Oh my gosh.
So then I thought, so when the lease was up, I was like, out of there. Pew. I'm not signing up anymore for this because it was weird. It really was like creepy,
Eerie.
weird.
Yeah.
But, so then I started studying later. I started writing this Facebook post just about it, just for the hell of it. And it turned out, because I thought it was the territorial attorney lived in that house, but the house wasn't old enough, so I couldn't figure it out. But what it was this parking lot 2 doors over used to be the territorial jail. So I think that, and the house next to me was also haunted, and they used to try to rent out to School of Mines students, so science guys. None of them lasted more than 2 weeks. Wow. And that was just next door to me.
Uh-huh.
And I think it was the residual energy from like the old
Like the
territorial
prison
jail.
and stuff
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah.
Dang.
So I didn't like that. Every once in a while, like you can just get this feeling and people go, oh, I don't believe you. And I'm like, well, you don't have to believe me,
No.
but like,
it's
Once you've
beyond real.
experienced it though.
Yeah.
oh, it's just this cold chill that there's no other way to get that same cold
No.
chill. It's not like standing out in the wind or anything.
No.
It's just like,
Specific.
I
I have
have-
it right now.
Yeah, I have one where I just sat up in the middle of the night when my house was being haunted, and that gush of cold air was like, nothing I have ever.
Yeah.
well, at least you sat up.
There's a lot of things that.
Oh yeah. I was in Leadville, like in this little tiny at the Delaware Hotel, and I've heard it's haunted, but I'd stayed there before. I'm
Yeah.
like, nothing's going on, too
Yeah.
many tourists and stuff. But I had this little tiny cubbyhole room, and in the middle of the night, I just felt it like that zing down your spine. I didn't even roll over to look. I'm just like, nope, I'm just gonna lay here.
That's what I did. I laid back over and I put the
It was like,
covers over my
just
head
right
and went.
here, and then it just eased and went away. It's just
Yeah.
like, so it's just kind of like, what is that? But I think stuff like that is fun.
I
Once
do
I'm
too.
over
Like
it.
it scares me, but I do think it's interesting. I think also certain people are a little more sensitive or aware of it than
Yeah,
others. My
yeah.
husband's the same way. He thinks I'm crazy. I'm like, dude, I've had some experiences. Though. How do you explain that he's not? There's always an explanation. If the lights flicker, he's like, oh, it's just the electrical,
Yeah,
for noise. He's like, it's just
yeah.
the house. I'm like, no, it's not, but whatever.
Well, seriously. So I did this ghost tour, like at Halloween time, downtown Denver, and like they had like some real ghost explorer people, and they're like, well,
Yeah.
you just take your phone and you do 3 clicks at one time, like click, click, click. I got all these pictures of orbs, and my husband's a science guy. He sat there that next Saturday, and he is looking through my camera, like here's an orb, not, he couldn't figure it out, and he still can't. And he's just like, he hands me the phone back, goes, I don't want to talk about it. So I'm like, okay. But yeah, he was just like, Randy, you're a meatball. But I'm like, there's pictures.
Here it is.
That house, like the lights. Oh yeah, there's certain people that didn't believe it until it happened to them.
And then did they get kind of weirded out?
Oh yeah.
Oh yes. When poor Riley had to watch my house, and you guys were there, and
then it creeped out to the old shop, and then it's now followed us to the shop.
Oh,
and it's nothing like crazy.
No,
but
it's just
it's certain
like,
things.
It was very aggressive when it first started happening. When that
Yes.
person passed, it was very aggressive,
Yeah.
and then it's since calmed down. But
I'm glad it's calmed down.
Yeah.
I mean,
to
they
make
kind
certain
of do.
little
Yeah.
appearances here and there. Yeah.
It's just like, I'm here.
Yeah.
I threaten my husband, if he's really bad, I'll haunt him,
There you go.
I think my
go.
mother would know how to do that. I don't know how to do that, but
yeah.
I just
You're like, I'd figure out a way. Then you're gonna believe it, dang it,
Yeah,
because I'm gonna
like,
be there.
Hello.
I am here. Yes, that's crazy.
Yes.
And some of those, just the old places, just the history, like whether it is like an old prison or like burial grounds, even,
Right.
like
Oh,
it just
there's no
holds
way I
that,
would
you know.
ever buy a house on a burial ground.
Man.
You hear that every
You hear
once
that,
in a while.
and people don't care, and I'm like,
I'm like going,
no, thank you, I'm good.
that is,
No
yeah,
way.
that's like,
that's a no
nah,
for
I'm
me.
not doing that.
No. No.
That's back to
Agreed.
do the right thing. Like,
Yes,
the,
don't do that.
The
Yeah.
sin you are saving might be your own. So it's just like,
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious. Oh man. Well, kind of to get on like a subject of more, not necessarily your books, but stuff that kind of inspires it. Do you like Western movies? Do you have a favorite Western movie?
I like McCabe and Mrs. Miller, which is a historical one. It's about a guy, I don't think he's a gunslinger, but he kind of messes with the railroad guys, and there's a madam who smokes opium, and it looks very realistic to the time. It's like, my husband got a job in LA, and I met this director on a plane going out to visit him from Paramount, and she's like, well, do you want to, I'll get you a job, So I'm like, yeah, I need a job type of thing. And they used to have like those VHS tapes just laying around in the lunchroom if they didn't, it was just movies you wanted to take it. So I got that from there, and I just thought it was the most radical thing I've ever seen.
How cool.
Thought that has influenced my writing. Also, is it Come Hell or High Water, which is kind of a modern one.
Yeah,
and it's about I think two brothers in the Texas Panhandle or something like that.
Sounds really familiar.
Yeah, and that is a great movie. It's once again, it's not sugar-coated Western. It's like people, it feels very real. It feels like people desperate. Feels like people who can't make their house payments. Feels like people making bad choices. But the one scene that I really like from it, there's a fire coming, and there's cowboys like driving the cattle across into the river just to get out of the flame, and they're like, that's why I send my kids to college so they don't have to do this shit type of thing. And it's like, there's like a real line,
There's a real,
that, egg is not easy.
No,
I
it's
mean,
not.
all
Even
your
today,
customers
gosh,
know
there's
it's
so much
just
today too that it's different, but it's always a challenge. It seems like there's always something.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's just like, and I just can't imagine, like, it's your job to keep the cattle out of the fire,
right?
And you're on some horses.
That's a big ask. Yeah,
it is a
that's
huge ask. I mean, that's daunting to me. So I mean, things that look like insurmountable odds, even if people are like, oh yeah, I can do it. I mean, I think I always ask myself, could I do that? And I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. So then there's another path to explore. What can a person do, and what can't a person do?
Yes, for sure. Do you have like a favorite historical figure that just kind of stands out to you?
No,
not really.
Not really.
Cool.
Silas Sewell. Silas Sewell would be one. Not really. I mean, it's just kind of like, I think I look at him more like a group of people. I'm interested in groups of people, and individually, yes, but like just more like, like
Groups of people. That's so cool. Yeah, I bet you learn about some cool people too, though.
You do.
Yeah.
People who shine, people who stand out, people who are kind, people who are not kind.
Yes,
You know,
there's a lot
it's
of
just
that.
yeah. So it's just
Yeah.
kind of interesting, like, and why? What happened to them to make them be that way?
Be that way. Yeah.
You know, so it's just kind of interesting. It's
is.
like you inhabit other people's heads. I think it's called head hopping.
Head hopping. You're like,
Yeah.
yes. Oh my gosh. Gosh, we've touched on such cool stuff. It makes me want to go visit all these places.
I know you
I'm like, I have to
should.
watch this podcast and take notes of
Yes.
all these things, so
like
I
a
can
staff
go.
trip to
Yep.
that thing. That'd be
Go
so
do some
fun.
research and
Yeah.
See,
and
that's like the whole
watch some
thing.
movies.
It's like Colorado is such a great state. Wyoming is a
Yeah.
great state. New Mexico. I mean, we've got all this stuff. Like all these
Got
people are
all this
coming here to
culture,
be
yeah.
tourists.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, you know, a lot of my friends are going like flying all over these places, and they're like, "Why don't you travel anymore?" Well, I'm always gone doing something.
Yeah.
But what am I looking for? And I've traveled a lot, you know, and that's been great. But now I'm just kind of looking for stuff at home, and I'm thinking about
Local
it more
stuff, yeah.
deeply, and like, what does it mean? And I'm trying to like figure out paths, I guess. And,
Yeah.
you know, Paris is great. Paris is lovely. You know, I know how to order strong cheese really well because this lady in the store made me speak it properly. It's like really funny. Like the French are such funny people. I like them really well. But I was researching another book, and my poor friend Diana, she went with me, and I didn't know she had never been to Europe before in her life. So I'm making her go through World War I trenches. This is not
my
a
God.
standard like tour of Europe. Like she saw very little that was good. You know what I mean? And she's like a trooper, and she's doing it, you know, type of thing. And it's just kind of like, you know, I like to look at stuff like that.
Yeah.
But you know, when you go to just Paris or something like that, it's lovely.
Yeah.
It's like going, you know, to a big city here. I mean, I don't know. Now I'm just looking for stuff more home, more grounded, more local.
Yeah.
And I'm a big proponent for like travel around your state, get to
Yeah.
meet your like fellow citizens, see what their concerns are.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it's really interesting just to like, you know, sometimes the Eastern Plains Hill, very different than Denver. Denver and
yes.
Boulder, completely different than everybody else. Craig, they're doing yet another thing, you know,
Right.
and Trinidad, they're
Absolutely.
doing something
So
different. And it's just like all
completely different.
really
Total
interesting.
different like realms.
It
Yeah.
is, it is.
Almost cultures of
But
you
they
know,
are,
the
it's
different
different
places.
cultures. And it's like,
Right.
why are they like that? And it's like,
Yeah.
well, because, and I
Right.
find it's fun.
Finally at a point, and you know, that's my end goal, is to be able to travel. I just want experiences, and you
Yeah.
know, so I got to go to some very fun places and go to Belize, and now I'm like, you know what?
Fun.
But I've seen a few islands now, and I'm like, you know what? There's so much here in the U.S. I don't want to do that. So I backtracked, kind of like you. Like, there's so much culture here, so much I could learn just
Right.
staying right here. So that's my next chapter.
That's kind of what I'm doing, you know, and
Yeah.
I just drive places. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just kind of like, you know, and
Yeah.
it's kind of fun. Like for some odd reason, like I hooked up probably due to the Rocky Mountain Horse Expo with this filmmaker down in Farmington, New
yeah.
Mexico, Laura Lee Harper or whatever. So I'm doing talks for her down in Farmington,
Nice.
and she had this Mustang matinee thing.
Yeah.
I met the coolest people. They had like an Navajo holy man who was like this
Wow.
great sculptor, and like he's all over the internet, very expensive stuff. There were other filmmakers. There were like people doing yoga on horses, which I still don't understand, but yeah, you know, just like
Nor the
all
goat
those-
yoga, don't get it.
Oh, they pee on you. Because, like, my friend Diana, who did all the trenches, tried goat yoga, and I guess the goat peed all over her husband, and he's not going back to yoga anymore.
He's like, I'm done. Yeah.
Well,
nope.
they
Can't say I
peed on
blame
her purse, too, so I don't think she's going back to goat yoga either. I'm just, like, laughing. I'm like, you know, but you
Don't
tried.
understand it. Did you try?
They're cute.
Try one thing, but yeah, that's.
But, you know, they just kind of let go.
They're
So
goats, yeah. They're
goats.
literally goats, yeah.
But
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
it's fun to see, like, there's so many talented people here. It's just
Yeah.
like, you know,
A lot of history too.
a lot of history,
Yeah.
like different cultures, different stuff. They're
Different everything.
telling me all sorts of stuff.
Well, speaking of that, what kind of stories are you kind of chasing next? Like, what's to come?
Colorado during World War II.
Oh yeah.
So that is one, and we were talking that they had a labor camp for the POWs here. Like Colorado had like 52 POW camps.
Wow,
in
I
the
did not
state.
know that.
You know, nobody knows that, right? And so this let me bust Dad, because he is the poor man who is not around here to defend
himself. Yes.
So he's like, yes, during World War II, you know, his cousins had a ranch like up by Loveland and like one up by Gearing and stuff. And he's like, yep, they had POW laborers working there. The guy's name was Fritz. They really loved Fritz the German, and they were all crying when he had to go home. So I'm like listening to all this and I'm believing him. So then I'm like, okay, so I do some studying, and yeah, there's Germans and stuff like that. It just didn't have singular ones going out to ranches, but detail.
Still, whatever. Yeah,
I contact his elderly cousins. I'm like, hi, this is Randy, Ron's daughter. Did you guys have POWs working at your ranch during World War II? They're like, no. I'm like, they're like, some of the neighbors did. But I'm like, well, thank God. But like, he had just made this whole story up. And I sold like the idea to a university press. It's like, yeah, my dad said, you know, all this stuff. And it's all fine and good and dandy. But I'm like, that man, that man.
That jokester you.
Yeah, that's well, funny. You know, I think like he would just, I think we have the same brain in a weird way, that he invents things and invented stories, and he didn't write. But it's like, Dad, there were no POW.
But yeah, his
that
stories
you knew.
could have like just ignited your creativity, and you know, you don't even.
But these poor people, like they're like going, well, we wish you well on your search, and like, you know, here's some links and stuff. So like then 92-year-olds are sending me like
links
email
and stuff.
links
Oh my
and
God.
Stuff. I'm like,
thanks.
But you know, thanks. You know.
Well, that's exciting. I am
Yeah.
definitely gonna have to catch up on all your books, and I can't wait for that one.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
Yes, it's so cool to hear. Like, you're obviously very passionate about it, and I think you embrace it in a very great way. You represent it in a good way.
I think what the most interesting thing about World War II, like just as Colorado as a state, is how well we actually did. I mean, we were very decent to these people. We did, but we absorbed the Geneva Convention. We sent a lot of men to the front. I mean, women ran the farms and the ranches. They had to have POW labor, just the whole dynamics of how did we get through it. And once again, proud of Colorado. So not all the people in Colorado, but a lot of them I can trace to other states, so they're really not our responsibility. So it's just kind of like, so yeah, I'm looking forward to that one. And then I think I have promised Kensington fiction book, which is just nonfiction. It's called The Funeral Bride, and it's about a mail-order bride who comes out and her husband's already dead by the time she gets there. So what does she do? I'm just such a bag of fun stories, aren't I? It's just like, what is wrong with you?
No, it's awesome.
People are like, can't you write nice things? And I'm like,
like,
they are nice. Yeah. Well, they are kind of nice. Like usually people survive. So
usually they make it to the end. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love it. That's so cool.
When somebody picks up one of my books, what do I hope they feel when they finish? I hope they feel proud of themselves. I hope they feel proud of their ancestors. I hope they feel proud of their state. And I mainly write Colorado based. I just hope they feel a sense of hope and pride and strength.
That's amazing.
That's what I really hope that they feel. And we can survive.
Yes, we can.
Just, you know.
Well, I think like when I read the Market Street Madam, just taking you back to, we take today for granted, even though it is hard. Like I say, so many demands on us in the technical part of the world. But it was, I mean, what others have endured before us is nothing compared to what we endure today. And so you just take for granted so much, and you lose sight of how lucky we really are.
I know. We are really lucky. And I mean, we're from a great state. We're from a great part of the country. Yes. I mean, it's a great country, you know, so just like, and you know, what's really weird is history really does repeat itself. I remember people always say that. It's so sad, it's cliche that like, but it's seriously honest. You do see it. So it's just like, you know, and there's good times and there's not such good times, but just, you know, I always tell myself, just do the next right thing. If you get stuck, it can be small. It can be small, but just do it.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you.
Thank you
so
for
much
having
fun.
me.
Yes, thank you for coming. It was so fun. Now we have places that we need to travel. I need to
You
read your
do.
books. It's
You
so fun.
do. And
Yes.
like, get out and enjoy the state. Ride your horses.
Yes. And if for this video, if someone wants to shop your books, do you have like a link that I can add to this video?
Amazon.com, Barnes and Noble.
Okay.
They're all just the main links. I don't actually ship books.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's fine. Yeah, I'll refer because
Thank
I bet
you.
our customers are going to want to get their hands on it
Well,
for sure.
I just like this part of the state too. I
Yeah.
mean, my great grandmother and grandmother are from LaSalle and
that's
stuff
so cool.
like that. And
Yeah.
my mom came from Illinois out to Greeley and expected mountains. It's like,
Oh.
woman, you need to look at a map.
Go a little further.
Yeah,
Yeah, a little
it's just
further.
like, that's my mom, and she really wanted to marry a rancher. She thought that was the best idea. So Dad took her to whose ever ranches when they were fencing, and she decided that was not such a great idea. So
Yeah.
I love it.
But
That's
yeah,
awesome.
so well, thank you
Oh,
for
yes,
having me.
thank
This is
you.
like
Thank you.
one of my favorite stores. It's just like I love
Thank you.
everybody here. It's just such a
Thank you.
it's such a Western iconic type store. I
Yeah.
mean, this is just a rare gem.
Well, thank you. We appreciate you and all your
Appreciate
support
that.
over the years too.
Yes,
So
I love it.
awesome.
Thank
All
you.
right.
On a writing and a writing.
Yeah,
Writing and
writing.
writing.
Yeah.
Yes.
The whole thing.
Thanks for watching the Cinchuation Podcast brought to you by Saddle Up. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, subscribe, or drop us a comment. Until next time, thanks for watching.